Well, here it is. It's always nice to be wrapping up a round after such a solid win against the poor relation down the road. So welcome tonight to Crowcast Weekend Wrap. Joining me tonight is the inimitable Nikki New. How you going, Nikki?
My voice is slightly going, but that's mostly because I did a lot of cheering.
A lot of cheering on Saturday?
Yes, that was very pleasant.
It wasn't bad at all, was it? Unfortunately, I was working for half of it, but I still managed to watch it on my phone and got home for the second half. It was awesome.
You didn't have a 14-year-old who didn't tape it? Like there was somebody on the board who's now offering said 14-year-old up because he forgot to tape the game?
Yeah, if I had such a 14-year-old, that 14-year-old would be mowing the lawn for the next 6 months, I'd imagine.
Yeah, for a bit of fun.
And before we get into it too much, it was just looked like a great day at the Oval. You probably have a good description for us, but biggest ever home showdown crowd, all in good voice, and a massive win. So it must have been great there.
Mitch McGovern came back to the McGarry room after the game, and he actually said, it was Talia who actually said it, that in that last quarter when we started getting the other chant going and a few other things, that you couldn't hear another player if they were 10 metres away. It was that loud on the ground, which is, yay, go us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just the fact that the crowd was so one-sided. I mean, I only really saw one bay of Port supporters behind the northern goals, and then the rest of them were just scattered around the place, and they didn't really have much voice. I reckon most of them left at three-quarter time.
Oh, no, we had one behind us who, in the last quarter, when they started to kick some goals, he's yelled out about, Port, we never, ever, ever give up. And I think there was a lot of comments directed at him. You didn't even start. So it's a bit hard to not give up when you haven't actually started.
Well, that's true. I mean, I was only talking to my son today about all the mantras and catchphrases and things that they have. It's all very well and good. And I think Rue might have mentioned this once last year on the radio when he was questioned about pre-game entertainment and all that sort of stuff. It's all very well and good when you're winning, but it does fall a bit flat when you're not.
And I quite like what we had, and it was actually really good because the club sent out an email prior to it. It had a little timeline. It said when the gates opened, when everything else was, and what the things were on that were around the ground that you could do. So they had a kids zone. There were lots of people who kept stopping to have photos with the Clydesdales that were out the front, who just kind of stood there for half an hour, which was kind of funny when you're watching it from the Lindsay Head Tavern.
Easy for you to say.
Oh, yes. And there was the girls' game on. I watched a little bit of that. Then they had some other stuff. But most people are catching up with friends. You go to one of the bars, you have a few drinks, and then you wander down to your seat. And that's really all you're interested in, is for the game to start, essentially. They've got a new little intro bit, which was quite good. But then the boys didn't come out, so they had to play it again. So that was kind of like, aborted. So that was a bit funny. And the funniest part of it is because it's using the crow from the commercial, and it had, the birds circling around and everything else. Yeah. And we look up in the sky, there's a group of pelicans that are just hovering above the oval. And we're like, oh, they've come to see their friends. It was just really eerie. It was like, well, there's the birds.
Well, weren't Port Adelaide going to call themselves the Pelicans at one stage? Maybe it was their little mascots.
They disappeared very quickly.
They certainly played like Pelicans. Who, the Port or the Pelicans?
Yeah, the Pelicans. Oh, well, those ones, as we said, didn't really show up that much. No. I do find it quite funny from the injury front, where they're listing Westhoff with a dislocated finger. Lever's got hard hands.
Yeah. Well, that happened relatively early in the game.
That was an open hand slap that he actually did, and it popped his finger out straight away.
I reckon the ball might have hit the end of his finger, but that happened fairly early on.
Yeah.
And Chad pulled a heart muscle and, a few other things. Jared Polak caught the wrong taxi to the ground.
He's very slow.
So
He's not the Polak we have seen previously.
No, and you got to feel for him, I guess. I mean, it's a nasty injury and tough to come back from.
It's a horrible one.
Yeah. However, we shouldn't really talk about the Power because who really cares? So for those of you who've been listening under a rock, obviously the final score was 22 goals 12, 144 to 11 goals 2086 on the surface. It looks like bad kicking cost Port a bit, but really they were never in it. And,
no.
We'll go through it in a little bit more depth at the moment, but it was a pretty consummate performance by the Crows, particularly in the first half when they basically locked the game away. From there it was just a matter of by how far, really.
By midway through the second quarter, we were starting to discuss who's going to be the Phil Walsh medalist.
Yep.
And it was really hard to pick who it could be. We kind of, in the end, we thought it should have been Laird.
Yeah, although
he was setting up so much stuff. But Lynchy played well as well. And Lairdy kind of had a few issues with disposals after he got the hit from Jonas.
He certainly seemed a bit dazed.
But his disposal efficiency was still in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. What is it? Just for Pete, Atkins had 100% disposal efficiency, and those people on the board who think Atkins is going to get dropped have no idea about football.
I just can't understand the negativity towards a couple of players, and Rory Atkins is one of them. The poise that lad shows over the ball, and the ability to make the right decisions and hold onto the ball under pressure until the right option opens up, and then to lace out time after time after time. I mean, he set up more than one goal, particularly in the second half. He seemed to come into it a little bit more. I think he's really building, and he's got a good spot in our team.
Oh, him and Seesman on the wing, that's where they start. And that game wasn't the best to use them because we were getting over the top of that area. That's what we're aiming to do against Port. So he and Seesman weren't going to have a huge number of possessions, but they did their job. They got to the spaces. They tackled hard when they had to. And I said it on the board, and it does actually show up in the vision. When Jake Need is in the forward line, they've streamed forward. Dixon's on his own because Hartigan has had to leave Dixon to come over and cover Need. What you can see in the background is the sprint Seesman put on to at least get in the vicinity of Dixon, which made Need hesitate, allowed Hartigan to get that little bit closer and smother the ball.
Yeah.
So everybody's lauding Hartigan's work, and it was great that he left his man to put that pressure on. Yeah. But that sprint from Seesman, it doesn't give him a stat, but no. I bet you the club will highlight that when they do the review of the game.
Yeah.
Because that's team defence.
Well, and it epitomised the defensive structure that we held basically for the whole game. I don't know how many times watching them in transition, and fair enough, they weren't as clean as we were coming out of our defence into their forward lines, but we have a very set and consistent defensive structure that allowed us to always be goal side of them as they were transitioning out of defence. And the Seeds run, there were a couple of other times there where they just couldn't get fluent use into their forward 50. And whilst they had a bunch more inside 50s than we did, they were very shallow. A lot of them were repeat 50s just because we'd messed up. But when they did get the ball in deep to us, we had this crowding the deep forward again, which is what we were doing against the Kangaroos. But allowing Lever to be third man up just allowed us to kill the contest a lot more. So the actual selection of Hartigan, I think, really helped with our whole defensive structure.
And as I said on the podcast last Tuesday night, him in the SANFL, I thought he was the one who might come in. And he was leaving his man and doing that third man up a lot more in the SANFL than I've ever seen him do before. And he played well.
Yeah.
And he came in and he did exactly the same thing. So it's really nice to see that structure and having that nice base of an SANFL team to, you know, that they can actually practice the same game plan as David McKay said. And there's another one. How was his game?
D-Mac, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I noticed the most about David was he was running through the ball, which I haven't seen him do for a little while now. You know, and his physical size and attributes are not going to allow him to stick every tackle, but he was certainly strong over the ball, strong through the ball, and was a good link-up. And if he plays like that every week, there's no reason to drop him.
So we actually had two defensive midfielders. So Douglas was actually playing quite a defensive midfield game.
Yep.
But interestingly, D-Mac was on Robbie Gray in the first half.
Yep, I noticed that.
And he was doing very well on him. Yeah. And that little, I think it's Lynch's goal in the second quarter, where D-Mac, there's three Port players, and where I sit, we had a perfect view of him just looking at the three of them and putting the afterburners on and just blasting past them to get the ball. Yeah. Just the confidence that he had to do that. And also that he was just looking at him going, yep, I'm going to beat you guys. We were making comments in the first quarter that Port were hearing footsteps. It was there. I think our fast start, oh my God, we didn't give a team 19 points and then try to play catch up. Who is this amazing team? We were just on from the start. And I think that's actually more to do with possibly the quality of the opposition.
Well, we certainly got first use of it. Saucy bounced back from last week and certainly, I think, beat Lobby on the day. Our midfield intensity, I think, improved substantially over the previous week. You know, Tomo had 10 tackles for the day. I think Matty Crouch had a couple, and
he could have had the medal too.
He played very well. I thought he faded a little bit.
Well.
But interestingly, after Pikey must be listening to the rap evening, Donald, because we highlighted the disparity between time on ground for Scotty Thompson and Matty Crouch. Matty Crouch was down around 66%. Scott was up around 90% last week. Well, they redressed that this week. Matt was on for 77% and Tomo for 82%. So I don't know whether that was a glitch or intended, but Matt certainly had a good game, as did his brother, I thought, worked his way into the game quite well.
Yeah, that run in the third quarter, the last quarter, where he is the one who actually does that little kick off the side of his boot.
Yeah,
that he's getting tackled, but he's just got that little kick, which is, how the hell can you direct a football that way? But he can to get it to our free player, and then he just kept running through the midfield, and then just put that little bit of speed that we've heard he actually has, that he used to match Dangerfield for the burst. It's just from within the club, their impression was that Brad just didn't think he could do that.
Yeah.
And now it seems he's starting to use it.
Well, and I think
that he's got that.
Yeah, and I think too, he's still got a few weeks to get full match fitness as well. But it was great to see him be able to run the length of the field at pace in the last quarter and take that crumb. So good signs from him. Jakey Lever was another one I thought who was a rock, particularly in the first half. I've officially renamed the hole in front of the forwards for the opposition as the snake pit, because that's nice. That's Jake's territory now. The amount of times he was able to chop out, and it really shows, I think, that at this stage in his career, at least, that kind of role suits him best. He was able to be aggressive. He was able to do things a little bit more on his own terms, and he certainly gave able assistance to Tales and also to Hardigan in chopping out Dixon, who was really their only threat up forward.
Now, how good was our 100-game player, which, incidentally, if people don't know, when Daniel debuted to his now 100th game, there's only been 103 games that have occurred during that time. He's only missed 3 games.
Yeah, it's an interesting... It's
That's
amazing
amazing.
Stat. Yeah. And I guess it reflects a little bit our issues that we had down back with Phil Davis leaving and whatnot and Bocky. But for him to be able to nail down that spot and to hold it and to gain a reputation so quickly as such an effective shutdown defender is a credit to him.
And he even said and sounded surprised that, I'm 24 and I lead this backline. That's only a positive for us because you think, how young's Lever? Hardigan's the same age. Brodie Smith around the same age. Rory Laird around the same age. Brown around the same age. That's some quality defenders going on that have still got how many years ahead of them.
That's right, and it's very reminiscent of the defence that we had in the late 90s that had played with each other for a period of time. They knew each other back to front. They knew what the other player was going to do before they even did it themselves. And get another 50 games together, and it's going to be a very solid defensive setup. Good versatility, good mix of smalls and talls. More defensive minded, more attacking minded. It augurs well, I think, for the next few years.
So what did you think of the midfield setup that we had? Because occasionally they were getting us a little bit on the outside, and they had some clean getaways. But overall, I actually thought that was pretty good effort from them. I couldn't really fault any of the plays too much. And it's also quite amusing when you see Brad Crouch go off and he's replaced by Matt Crouch.
Yeah. Well, I think, you've got to look at it objectively. The experience of their midfield compared to ours was quite substantial. I mean, obviously we got Tomo and Dougie, but experience-wise, it falls away quite quickly after that. Whereas they've got some experienced heads in there in their, their first midfield rotation. I didn't think we did too bad. I think what we did do well was our work around the stoppages around the ground. I can't remember how many goals we kicked from stoppages, but I remember at one stage it had been like 7-0 from stoppages around the ground. So whilst they may have got centre clearances at times, I don't think they were very clean, and they certainly didn't hurt us on the scoreboard with it.
There was one section that did, and that was in the second quarter when Wingard got put into the middle. Yep. And it was those 3 goals that occurred were pretty much on the back of the work he was doing in the midfield and then running forward.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like you, that was the only thing about it. They'd kind of get away on the outside. It's like, guys, you could have done that. Or some other ones I'd look back and go, well, that just bounced that way. Or there were some things that you thought, yep, you can't quite combat that. So I was okay with it. I thought Sloane also had a very good game because he was, as we said, not very well sighted against the North game, and he bounced back.
It was quite noticeable.
Quite well.
Quite noticeable that he was often the hit-up player at halfback coming out of defence. So that's something we probably haven't seen so definitively in the past, but he was definitely the go-to guy on one flank as we were exiting defence. So, and that role suited him well, I think. Again, another player who had a role to play and played it really well, and some of his creative handballing to continue our run, because our run was very creative and very daring, and often it was him that was, for example, that handball that he gave to Jenkins to set up Jenkins' long goal on the run. That really epitomised what Sloaney was doing all day, really.
The mark that he took before that little within the gap, there was some absolutely beautiful passing we were doing that was pinpointing between Port defenders. And we were trusting as well, even if we were kicking to a contest, we were trusting that our player was going to outmark them. And one of them I find very interesting about how much trust his teammates have in him is the second gamer in Malera.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't he come on?
He's got a good pair of hands.
He really he showed some self-belief on the weekend, kicking at 85%, efficiency, 20-odd disposals. And as you say, there was no shying away from him on the ground. If he was there to use, they'd use him.
And I think, the fact that Don Pikes referred to him, just said, yeah, he's a special kid.
Yeah, they're not they're not backing away from that.
That was Camporelli, the three-quarter time interview. I actually haven't finished watching all of the game yet. I got to kind of that bit. And he just said, yep, he's a special kid.
Yeah, they're not shying away from it. They're quite happy to say that they've got someone special there, and I mean, it just shows on the ground. Some of his, fancy footwork and selling the candy. I mean, he made Trengove look stupid at one stage there off halfback, and set up a goal. He looks like he belongs. He looks like he's on the pace. All it is confidence building with him.
I have to say, though, my favourite play or passage that occurred was when Matt kicked it to Rory, who handballed it to Rory, who handballed it to Rory, who handballed it to Mitch, who handballed it back to Rory, who then kicked the goal.
Yeah.
It was like all the Rorys got involved, and it started with an M, and there was another little M just in there, just to round it out. When he handballed it to Mitch, and afterwards it's like, no, it would have been like a whole chain of Rorys.
A chain of Rorys.
And the commentators, none of them twigged. We twigged immediately after it happened, going, hang on, that's all the Rorys. But yes, commentators were not good.
They might start calling McGovern Rory just to give him some shit. There was some really good numbers. I thought Scotty Thompson could have very easily got the Walsh medal again.
Yeah.
This year. I mean, he was in beast mode. He's always in beast mode in showdowns. And once again, his strength over the ball, 10 tackles, how many possessions he had, 29-odd touches. And he was not his usual self in terms of turning the ball over or giving away silly frees. He was focused, and he looked like a bit of a general in the midfield.
Yeah, it was really noticeable at the ground, how strong he was. And he's bringing Wines down, and Wines actually quite a strong player, and he's quite hard to tackle. And as soon as you knew that Thompson was in the vicinity and that tackle started, it was going to stick, and that ball was not coming out. And sometimes that's just what needed, because you don't want them to get that little kick forward or that little pass out so then they can break and run. I think in terms of the coaching, there was definitely a plan that was put in place to combat them. And,
definitely.
And it worked so well. And you could just see how calm, even when Port were getting that run on, there's nothing on the grounds that I could tell whether there was like any panic. It was just like, yeah, okay, well, that one didn't quite work. We might try it again.
Yeah.
And see if it does work.
Yeah, and it's at those times that our disposal deficiency starts to drop off in times gone by. And we do start to panic and give, bad handballs or, start kicking down the line or all the rest of it. But we didn't lose our creativity. We didn't lose our aggressive run through the corridor. And that just showed me that they trusted their structure. They believed in what they were doing and the purpose of why they were doing it. And they actually did something with Port that they didn't do last week, and that is they just for about 2 minutes, they just slowed it down a little bit. And that allowed us to get the momentum back, or at least to, balance off the momentum. And then away we went again. Another bloke that flew up I reckon he flies under the radar. Lukey Brown had a great game. 26 touches. What do you have? 6 rebound 50s, 6 tackles, 3 inside 50s. Pretty much shut down their smaller,
Wingard.
their smaller guys when they were up forward. Wingard was hardly sighted and ended up having a sook on the bench in the last. Another great
He's hurt his
game.
hamstring.
I bet he plays next week. Well, Hinkley said basically they took him off because they didn't want to risk him. So apparently they do give up.
Why were they leaving Boak out there? Boak is actually, to me, that he should not be playing.
Well, they're killing him.
There's something. Yeah, they are. And he's such a good player that it was just watching him bust his gut, but he can't kick more than 30 metres, if that. Well, but there's one area we need to have a little chat about, which is a sharing, caring forward line.
They are quite in love with each other, aren't they?
And it was funny because Lynch was interviewed on the ground just prior to the presentations, and he talked quite a bit. And then when he wins the medal, he's got to talk to the crowd again. He's just like, yeah, thanks for coming. And yeah. Because he'd already just told everybody, he's like, we don't need to hear it again.
Yeah, exactly.
The broadcasters haven't heard it, but it was quite funny. But that was, he reiterated words, get them out, that'll be good. It in the coach interview as well.
Yeah.
Which is about how they really are more about giving off a goal. That's more important to our forwards than actually scoring the goal themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's helped McGovern and Miller fit in
because they're not shy to give off to these young blokes, you know.
No.
But
and trust them.
Having said that, they've earned it as well. I mean, Mitch continues to put himself in the right spots, and Miller has just got that silk that, you just want to give the ball to him and see what he can do with it. So I'm impressed with both of them, actually. The good thing about our forward line is that we've got some contradictions. We've got a tall bull who's great on the ground. We've got a mid-size forward now in McGovern who's fantastic in the air. How do you cover these guys? You put a big bloke on Josh and he kills you at ground level, and you play small on McGovern and he'll do you in the air every time.
And we actually adjust our forward line depending on how they're trying to defend. People were thinking that Tex had a bad game. Tex was playing the perfect captain's game in that he sacrificed his own game because he could see what was happening, and it freed up the others because the concentration was mostly on him. So he started playing that higher up the ground, which he can do quite well, and bringing the ball in.
Yeah.
He didn't have a bad game if you were actually there watching what you can't see on the telly.
Yeah. I did notice that we didn't have Tex playing quite as high as we did last week. He was, against North Melbourne, he was coming all the way down to half back, and I think that's where they've utilised Rory a little bit better this week.
Yeah.
Tex was certainly coming up to the middle portion of the ground, but he wasn't going much deeper than that. And I think that works a lot better. We didn't seem to be caught out as much for targets in our forward line as we were at times the previous week. The structure looked fantastic, and whether that's just because Port didn't run and chase, because I felt they were lazy and undisciplined, but certainly the structure looked really good across the ground.
And Eddie's point of the year?
That would have been unbelievable.
Oh,
I mean,
that was just, everybody just started to stand up, and I had to stand up to see actually what was going on, and then it hits the post at the last possible minute. It was going through.
Yeah, it
only just hit the post. It was seriously, and he was trying for mark of the year as well.
Well, there was one that he took on his chest that he should have held. It landed straight in the breadbasket and it just popped out.
Yeah.
But
the fact that they're allowed to go for that they've obviously been given a license. If you see it, have a go.
Well, I reckon Betts has got a license to do anything he wants, pretty much.
I think he was the one who actually started that whole sharing and the giving off and the goal assist, because we knew he was good at that at Carlton, and that's obviously something that he's always instinctively done. And I think that actually shows through, because what he said, what he wants to do post-football career is he wants to get into teaching.
Yeah.
And we've seen how he looks after our Indigenous boys, but he also looks after the Indigenous boys from Port as well.
Well,
So he kind of gets them all in together.
if he gets into teaching, someone's going to have to buy him either a pair of platform shoes or a step ladder because no one will see him.
No, good teacher. Doesn't matter the height. The kids will listen. And come on, it's Eddie.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right.
Everybody's going to know Eddie. I have to say, I thought JJ's game was, once again, he built on the consistency from last week. Was good.
I think he's starting to play like we want him to play. You'd always like to see him take more contested marks, but as I said, with McGovern in the mix now, we can probably afford to carry Jenkins a little bit more as a tall bloke who plays a little bit smaller than he should. But he did take a couple of nice overhead marks as well.
There were some beautiful passes to him that were up high.
Yep.
That utilised it. And the same as Frank from National Tiles has said in the chat, McGovern does the same thing. He's got a huge leap on him and he takes it up high, and we're putting it to his advantage to do that. You just can't punch. You can't defend when it gets up like that.
Well, the good thing about Josh is that, and he didn't do it last week, so maybe someone got into him during the week, but he attacked the ball in the air when they were kicking those passes to him this week. Whereas last week he'd sit under it and not attack and get swamped a little bit. This week he was attacking the contest and attacking the ball a lot better. So I'll tell you what, he improves another 10 or 15% and we've got a real player there as well. So, and you know me, Nikki, I've been a Jenkins knocker from way back, but credit where it's due. I've always wanted to see him play like he can play, so it's really good to see him starting to blossom now.
And who else have we got running around that forward line? Lynch.
Yeah, well, Lynchy played a typical Lynchy game, and again, who was on him for most of the time? They had Pittard sort of quarterbacking him, but at times I saw Trengove on him. At times I saw Homsch. Yep. Even Broadbent, I think, at times. I don't know. They didn't seem to have a plan.
I think the way we were bringing it in, they were just panicking. Like you said, they didn't quite know where they were supposed to be, what they were supposed to do, contrasted with the pressure our midfield was putting on and those high bombs that Port were doing into Dixon, who was just getting absolutely smashed by Talia, and Lever and Cheney and Harnigan, who all was so easily able to intercept those kind of entries. We were doing a lot lower passes. We were getting in closer to the 50 before we were making that kick in. It was just smart football.
Yeah. There's a few elements, I think, that we need to continue in order to be able to play that brand of football. Our disposal efficiency was high for us. That obviously helps. Our goal-kicking accuracy was surprisingly good, and there's nothing like scoreboard pressure when it comes to not only shutting the opposition out, but also, building the confidence as well. So I think that helped. And our intensity around the ball, if any of those three factors drop off, I think at this stage of our development under Pike and Pike's new game plan, that's where we're exposed, and I think that's where North Melbourne caught us. But those three areas, when we're on song, it's good footy to watch. It's exciting, it's aggressive, it's brave, and it's certainly beats the hell out of Ross Lyon's defensive crap.
It was very interesting because I think pre-season, most of us we've been talking about, and we've said our forward line is scary. We think this is probably one of the best forward lines in the AFL. It's taken 2 rounds, and we pushed North Melbourne, Jenkins doing so well, and now the shellacking that happened. And I'm sorry, but that advertiser journalist needs to pay me some royalties, because I'm the one who say crows do shellackings.
I think
That was quite nice.
I think I
They
actually
used
used it in your honour on the thread too to announce
I-
this week's rat. Yeah.
But the debate has been on the footy shows this morning a little bit, and then I caught some of the game pre-game stuff when they're talking to Wayne Carey.
Yeah.
And the question that was coming out was, is the Crows forward line the most potent in the AFL? Now, Carey can get stuffed because he said no. I'd like to know who's better.
Well, I can't think of a
more potent forward line.
I can't think of a more versatile front six. I think West Coast, although today they were a bit lacking, West Coast has the potential, but not many others.
Bulldogs have Stringer and a few others that are good, but I don't think they've got the quality six.
I think the Bullies
they rely a lot on their midfielders as well.
Yeah, and just that fast transition, getting one outs and mismatches. In terms of a forward six, and given that we've still got a couple of likely types running around in the twos, sport for choice. And with our defence always being seen as a bit of our Achilles heel, now starting to look like a solid unit, and with a few choices rolling through the midfield, there's a good foundation there without getting carried away, because Port really were witches' hats, and we didn't beat the Kangaroos, who I don't rate much more than a 6 to 8 team last week. So there's still work to do. I think under more pressure, we need to be able to reproduce that sort of aggressive ball movement, and we need to reproduce games where we hold structure and maintain our shape under severe pressure of a team like Hawthorn, before we can, call it a working model. But the foundation's certainly there.
Yeah, but it is nice to finally actually be noticed in the Victorian media. I did love Sloan was on AFL 360 last week, and there was mention about Dangerfield, and Sloan's response to them was, "Yeah, we've been seeing him play like that for years."
Yeah, well, that's right. Nothing new.
And it's just like, he's not doing anything new. You guys just basically haven't paid attention.
Yeah.
And I think that was also a nice little subtle swipe at the Victorian media going over the top about him.
Oh, yeah. Without getting off the beaten track, it was cringeworthy the last few weeks, Dangerfield.
Oh, yes, that was fun. Do we want to talk about Dixon's little dummy spits? Well, Mr. Petulant Sore Loser?
I actually feel a bit for Charlie. I'm not a Dixon hater. I would have been quite happy for us to have picked him up in the off-season. I think what's happened with Charlie is he's been sold a bloody lemon.
Yeah.
He's come to a club that from the outside has a certain perception in terms of, all their never say die attitudes and all that sort of rubbish. And he's got to a club that has some real deficiencies on its list. And I don't think he was ready for it. And whilst that doesn't excuse him being a dickhead, I reckon he might be sitting back going, geez, I wonder whether I made the right move.
And as somebody pointed out, after I made the comment I thought it was very interesting when he'd dumped Lynch, and he got him high, and so the free was paid. And Lynch was immediately in his face and having a go at him. That Tex just wrapped Dixon up, and he was talking to Dixon. Tex was calming Dixon down. Where was Port's leadership? Because there were one of the 50s, to be fair, it wasn't him, but the other 50 was he gave away. He gave away a few other little silly free kicks as well. His little whinge that just because it's their home ground, you don't have to pay a free kick. Well, Charlie, it was there. He might be in trouble. Actually, he should be in trouble for the kick he did on Smith. And then at the third quarter, they came out and they tried to start fights.
Yeah.
They were into Jacobs from the start. I thought it was very interesting at the very start of the game, they tried to get into Miller,
Yeah.
and Douglas was put down forward. And I wonder whether that was also partly right. We know they're going to go after him. You're a good solid body. You'll protect him. And basically Lynch, Jenkins and Douglas were keeping the Port defenders away from Miller, who just got to, run around in a little circle away from them. It's like, you're not going to bully us. We're not accepting it.
It's interesting.
And fair play as well to the umpires, because, and I know a lot of people put a lot of shit on Razor Ray, but he's actually one of the best umpires in a situation like that, because he won't take that shit. He will pay a free kick.
Oh, you've said shit. Now I've got to write explicit on the bloody thing again.
It's already on there.
Oh, is it?
You did it already.
See, I knew you were potty mouth, so...
I knew I could say it. Yeah, shit's the worst I can come up with. But it was... That kind of stopped it, because, it's not going to be acceptable if frees keep getting given away, and we just weren't taking that step back. And even Smithers went after Dixon as well.
Yeah.
Basically saying, it's just not on.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
I mean, it was fairly predictable that they were going to try and come out and snipe a little bit after half-time. Me and my son were driving home from work, and we were watching it on I was driving, and he was watching it on the AFL app, and we both called it straight away, and within, a couple of minutes they'd taken Lairdy out. But I think it was Nathan Bassett came out with a comment today in one of the interviews, saying that they were faux tough, and they didn't know when or how to impose themselves. So he basically was critical of his own team. So that'll be interesting to see if there's any fallout of that.
Oh, that's the Bassett we know.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from it, does he?
Yep, he's going to say it, which is why I think he didn't get along with Hurd, and he hated Hurd's guts. Quite rightly.
Yeah.
There was also the thing, what he said about Dixon. He goes, he's still learning the game. I'm sorry, he's the same age as Tex, and he's been playing the game for the same amount of time. He can't still be learning the game and still feeling his way.
I took that as a bit of a swipe at the Gold Coast coaching staff, to be honest with you. Because there's knowing how to play. There's one thing to know how to play football. There's another thing to know how to play AFL football. And it seemed to me as if Bass might have just been saying, well, we're actually teaching him, or trying to teach him how to play AFL football down here. But they paid a lot of money for a bloke who's still learning.
Yeah, that was a bit interesting.
So, final thoughts on the game, and then we might just quickly touch on the SANFL and the other games around the place this weekend. Final thoughts, Nick?
It was very pleasant. I quite enjoy it. They can do that more often. That'll be good. But yeah, we've got to keep building on it. We've got to still keep seeing that effort every week if we want to play finals and we want to win finals.
Yeah. I agree, as I mentioned earlier, and for me the most pleasing part was the even spread of contributors around the ground, the manner in which we played team football, the manner in which our structure held up, even when we were under the gun a little bit, and just the potency of our forward line when we did get good service. So it'll be interesting to see whether Richmond play a similar sort of style to Port. I don't reckon they will. They'd be silly if they did. But if they
Richmond will try and do a North.
Well, if
they'll
they
try and play that similar style, but I don't think they're going to be able to.
If they try and run and gun us, I think North would have failed. I think we lost the North game on selection, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
A couple of ill discipline acts, of course, but certainly I think we looked structurally so much better with Hardigan in. All good. Now, quickly, neither of us saw the SANFL game today.
So we're going to do a really good recap on it here.
Yeah. So apparently there was an SANFL game against Port Adelaide Magpies today at Madam, and we played like shit for 3 quarters, and then we turned up and won by 4 in the end.
Was it 4 or 5 goals?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 5 goals.
Comfortably in the end. So apparently Riley Knight had another good game and will be bashing down the door for the first person that drops off, which is good. Keaton Ramsey played well,
He kicked
apparently. Four. Charlie was quiet but came into it in the last. But it sounded... Well, the only interesting comment that I read on the boards about the SANFL game was the fact that we only used a half of our rotations in the first 3 quarters of the game. So that must have been a planned thing from the coaching staff to do that. We basically handicapped ourselves, if that's the case.
Yeah, I wonder whether it was fairly deliberate.
Well,
Be interesting to see the replay. Yeah,
it'd have to be. You wouldn't do that accidentally. You might drop 10, but you wouldn't drop 30.
And by the sounds of it, Dode actually he was a bit tentative to begin with and then built into the game nicely from a couple of comments that I've seen.
Yep. So there's... and Jared Lyons as well continued his really good form. So probably one of the more unlucky players on our list at the moment, I'd imagine, based on form. Can't really see where he fits in, unfortunately. He probably takes Matt Crouch's spot if Matt gets injured, heaven forbid, or maybe a Richie Douglas if Richie falls out of form or gets injured. But I can't see him forcing his way in. Riley Knight's really the only one, and if anyone else says that Riley Knight comes in for Rory Atkins, I'm actually going to get myself carded abusing them.
I think it'll be worth it. It's just ridiculous. Knight is somebody that we play through the forward line, so it's got to be one of the forwards. It won't be a wingman. He's got the tank, but it would be interesting. I think we'd prefer to use him through the midfield and forward than we do actually putting him on a wing.
Yeah, I agree. D-Mac's probably the obvious one, and they do a little bit of shuffling of the magnets, but I can't see who else.
So any of the other games as well, I didn't get to catch a few of them, but I've seen some of the results, and I did watch the Friday night game, and oh my God, that was hilarious at the end.
It was hilarious because I tipped him as well.
Oh, I did too. So I was quite pleased. Thank you, Collingwood. What I found very interesting, though, was the Friday night Fox group who were talking, and they were trying to talk up the game, the teams during the game. And Mark McClure was just going, well, there's 2 bottom 4 sides. Because that's the way they're playing. Their skills are deplorable.
Look, for the first half of... Sorry, go on.
They were, yeah. They were, the others were trying to talk them up and say, oh, yeah, it's great. Because, it's Eddie's team. But they were not good, either of them.
For the first half of the game, it looked like 2 teams that did not know how to win and did not think they could win. And I actually posted a tweet from the Crowcast Twitter about 10 minutes into the third saying Collingwood is starting to believe because that's when they actually started to hit targets and started to actually try to move the ball forward instead of sideways and actually started looking like a football team.
Making use of Fasolo.
Yeah, who's a confident little bugger, isn't he?
And who's the idiot on the board who said that Fasolo was a spud? No.
He's never been a spud. He's had attitude problems, but he's never lacked talent.
No, not at all.
So some of the other interesting results, obviously, Essendon getting up over Melbourne. That was almost predictable, given it was Melbourne.
Oh.
Poor buggers.
And Ruse coming out and blaming their big heads.
Yeah, well, I would have thought that that's a coaching issue to make sure that they actually had their feet firmly planted on the ground.
We made the call when we were seeing the results going, so they should be sacking Ruse and putting Goodwin in place?
Yeah, well, was Goody coaching yet? Or I think Goody's basically doing it.
I think they're sharing it, apparently.
Okay.
So is Ruse having too much of a say?
Well, he's probably a spokesperson now. He's probably, general manager of the world at Melbourne now, I'd imagine. Freo getting towed at home by Gold Coast was very interesting.
Ooh.
Is it the end of Fremantle?
Well, there was an interesting point made that what they're trying to do is they're trying to be attacking. And because they're trying to be attacking, they're going to get beaten on the counter if it doesn't come off correctly the first time.
It's like trying to teach me how to use an Apple Mac.
But it's good that, in a way, that Ross seems to be trying to change the game plan. He's realizing that football has moved on from his way and it won't work. He won't be able to win. But yeah, I think they're going to be the slider by the look of it, because they're vulnerable at home until they can start that attacking bit click.
Well, I don't think they've actually got the personnel at the moment to play any other style, and I think that's where the issue is going to be for them. That it's going to take them a couple of years just to reconfigure their list a little bit to play that different brand of football, because he's basically built a squad to play Ross Lyon football. So that's going to be...
The rumours are they're throwing about 800,000 plus around trying to get a key forward. So McCarthy and Hurley are there. Hurley or Hooker?
Hooker, I think.
I think it's Hooker because he's originally from WA.
Well, McCarthy's the one. I reckon he'll end up going back.
Every club is into Michael Hurley. They're very interested in him.
Yeah, probably not us, though. We'd be looking for a midfielder, I think, next year.
Yeah, possibly.
And
Geelong got beaten, didn't they?
Yes, the GWS got up and beat the Danger Cats. So that was fun.
In my old hometown.
In your old hometown, Canberra, yes. And the last two results. West Coast were disappointing against Hawthorn, I thought. I thought they'd at least make a good fist of it, if not win. But they looked a bit insipid. And it was a very congested game. I watched a little bits and pieces of it. Very congested and crowded game. It wasn't very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, see, I gave West Coast a chance because you looked at the outs and they were coming off. They weren't comprehensive against Brisbane. So West Coast are an interesting one, I think, to keep an eye on. Hawthorn
seemed content to let West Coast blither around with the ball for a while, and then when they got a turnover, Hawthorn would score. You know, it was one of those games where Hawthorn just crowded up the contest, and West Coast weren't good enough to get through the tight cluster, and it was a bit of an ugly game, and Sydney predictably got up over Carlton quite comfortably, 10-goal win there. So we have the Western Bulldogs sitting on top of the pile at the moment, which I actually thought would happen.
Yeah, with how many games that Eddie had, have they got in a row?
Oh, but do they ever leave Etihad ever again?
Oh, the AFL are completely and utterly gifting them a nice position up there, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago I thought they'd be top after 5 rounds, and that's on the back of the fact that I don't think they leave the indoor stadium in the first 5 weeks.
Now, is Pike's game plan that he's getting us to play to beat them?
Well, I think Pike's game plan seems to be... I don't know whether it's specifically targeted at Western Bulldogs. I think...
But, yeah, what I kind of mean is the game plan that he's implementing, he would have looked at going, okay, Western Bulldogs are our bogey side. We did beat them in the final, but they and Hawthorn are very much kind of our bogey sides in that top group, and they're the teams who are going to be there a while. So we need a game plan that works against those kinds of teams.
I think Beveridge deserves a lot of credit at the Bulldogs because I think he's shown the competition what an attacking style of football can do in terms of breaking down that, defensive zone. You could probably argue that
except
the Bullies...
he's a tool.
Well, he might be a tool, but that doesn't make him a bad coach. And they play quick attacking football. They're probably lacking one or two key players, and I think if in terms of personnel, we're probably better placed than they are to play that brand of football, simply because I think we've got more talent in our team than they do. Perhaps not so much in the midfield. We're pretty even there, but at either end of the ground, I think we match up quite well with them. But I think it's the new style in AFL. I think it's attacking football. Yeah. The thing that we're going to have to watch, I think, is our leaking goals defensively. I think we're in the top half a dozen of points against after a couple of rounds, so it's a little bit early to judge yet. But even against Port, we probably let them score more than what we should have.
That was mostly the last quarter. Here's a fun fact that I didn't get out in our little review. At 3/4 time, the number of goals we had kicked equaled the number of scoring shots Port had.
Yeah, well, they took 3/4 to get to our quarter time scoreline. The other thing I noticed just briefly, going back to our game just quickly, if my internet connection will actually work, the amount of, the disposal efficiency of the Port Adelaide midfield, I don't think there was one over 60%.
Ooh, that's going to hurt.
Actually, it was quite noticeable. I'll just have a look here. Hang on a sec. And you got to wonder whether that's a product of our defensive pressure, or whether they're just shit.
They do have some good midfielders in there, so give them a bit of credit. I know some supporters don't want to do that at all, but there are some in there that you would like in our team.
Oh, most
if there was the option.
See, here we go. Robbie Gray, 48.6% disposal efficiency. So 37 disposals.
Well done, D-Mac.
Yeah, 37 disposals, but only about 17 of those actually effective. Ollie Wines running at 55, Travis Boak running at 56, Brad Ebert at 52. I mean, they're horrendous from your entire midfield. Sam Gray, 55. So their entire midfield was off the boil, and you've got to think that because it was off across the board like that, that's certainly indicative of our midfield intensity, which was one of the things I think that cost us against North Melbourne last week. So that's really good to see.
Yeah, they pull their finger out and can respond.
Anyway, Nikki, I reckon we've... go on.
I was just going to say that if anybody has Foxtel, or keep an eye, because I'm pretty sure it'll go up on YouTube, but Don Pike is on the couch tomorrow night.
Ah, very good. That'll be interesting.
I wonder how much he's going to talk about total football.
Probably quite a bit.
And if they ask him about his golf. Because that seems to be the thing. Oh, he's actually a good golfer. We better ask him about it.
Well, he's off scratch, for goodness sakes. That's not easy.
I know. And his wife's off 1 or 2, so...
Well, have they got children?
Yep, they've got 2 daughters who are at university in Perth.
Oh, so they haven't done nothing much but play golf since they grew up then?
Yeah, it seems so.
Yeah. And obviously, don't forget, we've got Tuesday Night Live again at 8:30 Adelaide time coming up, with Peter hosting that this week. I can't remember who's on, but I'm sure there'll be
Not me.
Yeah, probably me then. And Scorpus looking at the team lineups and previewing the round with a focus on the Richmond match. That's on Thursday night at 7:30. So thanks to all those people that have listened tonight and all the people that will listen over the coming days. Thanks for your ongoing support of the Crowcast. We really appreciate it. We enjoy bringing it to you every week. And we'll see you on the boards.
See you there.